Welcome to Econtastic and our series examining the economic lessons from the hit show Secession. If you'd like this video, please check out the playlist that contains other videos examining the economic lessons from this wonderful television show. Today's lesson focuses on what's called the principal-agent problem. Several different ways you could find this defined. One common one that I found, I'll link to a couple of the definitions in the description, but a conflict in priorities between the owner of an asset and the person to whom control of the asset has been delegated. Often you see principal agent problems when you're dealing with a boss and an employee. The boss has a particular idea of what should happen, delegating and paying an employee, but the employee has their own preferences. Let's watch some clips spliced together from the Living Plus episode in Season 4, Episode 6. The agent here, it's the CEO of the company, or the co-CEOs, Kendall and Roman. The principal, it's the board. The board wants the CEO to do what they can to maximize profits or get as big of a buyout offer as possible to buy out the company, right? To maximize shareholder value. What we're about to watch is Kendall's attempt to make it no longer feasible for the firm to be bought out on what seems like a very lucrative offer. Let's watch now.
How would you describe it?
I would describe it as a meltdown, human Chernobyl.
Right?
But like specifically,
He was like shouting about how, we didn't know what a good deal was and how he didn't even especially want the deal.
He didn't want the deal?
Yeah, like his senior leadership team liked it, but, we better take what was on the table.
But that smells like a negotiating tactic to me because he made the offer.
Yeah. Maybe. It wasn't really coherent. He was sort of like saying that he was stringing us along and that he could, pull the deal and...
So what are you suggesting?
Can we recommend a deal with a person of this character, given everything else and so on, tweets, drug rumors, 50% in stock, that means we are exposed.
I'm convinced that the Living Plus real estate brand can bring the cruise ship experience to dry land and provide a significant boost to the earnings of our parks division.
You can stop it. So what we want him to say, double the earnings instead of a significant boost.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm not sure that I can do that.
But I bet you can.
My dad, he'd been around a little bit, would you say? He was conservative on these matters. And in terms of earnings growth, he has this to say.
I'm convinced that the Living Plus real estate brand can bring the cruise ship experience to dry land and double the earnings of our parks division. I couldn't be more excited.
Wow, double the earnings.
Okay. That's not fucking cool. Well,
it's really well edited.
Can we really do it? Are people who subscribe to Living Plus support really going to live 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years more? Is it worth it? Living Plus is going to be a premium product. Is it worth it? Well, if you ask me, would I take an extra year right now with my dad? Say the unsaid.
In these clips, we see Kendall and some of the people who are working with Kendall here, right? Cousin Greg and Roman. They're doing what they can to artificially drive up Waystar's share price. Now, you might think, look, driving up the share price, it's good for shareholders. But he's doing this kind of artificially, and this isn't long-term solutions that are going to create shareholder value. And he's doing this so he can get a price where Matson won't be able to pay to take over the company. This is a pretty major problem, and it is a classic example of a principal agent problem, one that occurs between, the boss and labor. So, mentioned a definition before, another definition of a principal agent problem: conflict in interests and priorities that arises when one person or entity who's the agent takes on actions on behalf of another principal or entity, the principal. So Kendall is the agent and is taking actions on behalf of the Board of Trustees. And the Board of Trustees expect, and really Kendall has the fiduciary duty to do things to maximize the value of the company for the shareholders. Kendall isn't doing that. Kendall has a competing priority. Kendall really wants to run the company, doesn't want to sell out to anybody else. Kendall wants to run it, loves being in charge. This is a pretty big conflict of priorities, because Kendall should be taking actions that would all maximize the well-being of the firm. Instead, you see some of the actions that they're taking, distorting the video so that his late father, Logan, is mentioning that it would double profits from the parks division. Kendall also is insisting that the financial folks start to value this more like a tech company than a real estate company in future projections, to which Cousin Greg rightfully notes, look, houses have been around for a while. That doesn't seem right. Putting on a fraudulent valuation, well, on top of being illegal, would actually be misleading the shareholders, misleading the public into thinking what the value of the stock should be, driving the stock price up. So the stock would not be bought out anymore by Mattson, so Kendall gets to stay in charge at least for a little bit longer. You see principal agent problems in all sorts of work relationships. It's not just a board and a CEO. Imagine somebody at a fast food restaurant that's hired to be a cashier, right? What does the boss and the company want? Well, they're paying an employee. They want this person to be kind and courteous to customers when they come in. When there's a break, to go down and wipe down the tables, wipe down the counter, make sure perhaps stock up on other supplies. Something simple as not to give free food to friends when they come in, right? Have the attitude of the customer is always right. In short, just be a good worker. The problem, of course, is the worker might have some priorities that don't completely align with what their boss wants, right? They might have a friend coming in and, it's not their money. They might want to slip in a free French fry when their friend buys a hamburger into a meal, right? They might, when they have 10 minutes and it's slower, instead of rushing out to wipe down the tables and make sure the dining room is nice and clean, they might want to sit and talk to coworkers, right? Which you can kind of imagine, that seems somewhat natural, but that's a conflict here, right? That's not what the principal wants of the agent. It's not what the boss wants of the worker. Okay, so we've heard about the problem. So what's the solution? Well, this is where game theory comes into play, and what's known as mechanism design. So within mechanism design, you are flipping a conventional game theory problem on its head. Instead of, for example, if you think of game theory, you might be handed this problem that you solve. What's the outcome of the game? Mechanism design, you have an outcome you want, and how do you set up the rules to get to that outcome? So for the principal agent problem, the principal wants the incentives of the agent to be such that he or she does what the principal wants them to do. In this case, the board as the principals would want the CEOs to engage in maximizing shareholder value, to create profits for the stockholders, and not engage in their own side gigs. So what are some ways that this can happen? Well, one way that you actually see in the real world is with stock options. Those who get stock options, if a CEO is getting stock options, so these are options are the right to purchase a stock at a preset price at a later point in time. You don't have to buy it, but you can. And the value of a stock option happens if a stock price increases, and it can be incredibly lucrative for a CEO. By awarding stock options to a CEO, it gives an enormous financial incentive for the CEO to see a big increase in shareholder value. That is one key way that boards attempt to make sure that their CEOs are really engaging in what they'd want to do. So that's a key way. More generally within work, there are questions over what should the incentive structure look like. Should you be offering promotions regularly to employees who do a good job as one thing that you could do to make sure employees are behaving a little bit more like what the boss would want them to do. So if you're, once again, going back to somebody in a restaurant, when there is a break, they'll go out and they'll clean up a little bit instead of chit-chatting with coworkers, right? The idea of getting promotions could lead to that. It could be there's variable pay or bonuses, but a contract could be designed to try to minimize the differences between what the agent wants to do and what the principal wants the agent to do. Hope you enjoyed this clip. I mean, there's some thought-provoking things that you can think about with the principal-agent problem, and this is a really good example of it. So my name is Matt Rosu. I'm Dean of the Sigmund Weiss School of Business at Susquehanna University. I'm also a professor of economics here. I love making videos that help make economics understandable, often using pop culture. So please like and subscribe if you enjoy this content. And I'll look forward to seeing you in the next video.